In 2007, the president of FC Barcelona stood in front of a room full of cameras and said something that honestly should have been impossible to say out loud. He said they had found a player better than Lionel Messi. Not the next Messi, not a player in the same bracket. Better than Messi. The kid he was talking about was 17 years old. He just scored 900 goals in Barcelona's youth system. 900! A number so completely absurd that the first time you hear it, you assume someone got the decimal point wrong. He'd also just broken Messi's own record to become the youngest player in Barca's history to debut in La Liga. His name was Bojan Krkić, and within 5 years, he was gone. Not poached by Real Madrid, not sold for a fortune to a rival, just gone. Wandering through 9 clubs across 5 countries, barely recognizable as the same human being who had the whole city of Barcelona convinced he was going to be the next great one. This is the story of what actually happened to him. And I want to tell you right now, it has almost nothing to do with football. Bojan was born in 1990 in Linyola, a small village in Catalonia, population around 900 people. He joined Barcelona's academy, La Masia, at the age of 9. What happened over the next 8 years was something the club genuinely hadn't seen before, not even from Messi. By the time he was 16, Bojan had scored 900 goals for Barcelona's youth teams. The coaching staff stopped treating him like a project somewhere along the way. He wasn't a prospect anymore. He was a certainty. This boy was going to be the best player in the world. It felt like a matter of when, not if. On September 28, 2007, 19 days after turning 17, Bojan made his first team debut under Frank Rijkaard. He became the youngest player in La Liga history for Barcelona, breaking the record that Lionel Messi himself had set just a few years earlier. The city went electric. You can imagine it, the noise, the front pages, the fan forums lighting up overnight. The comparisons started immediately. They were everywhere, inescapable. The new Messi, better than Messi, the next great one. Now think about that for a second. A 17-year-old kid from a village of 900 people. Imagine what walking into that felt like. Here's the thing the headlines never told you. While Barcelona was out there celebrating their shiny new prodigy, Bojan was struggling to get out of bed in the morning. Not because of injury, not poor form, not a bad attitude. Because of anxiety so severe that basic daily life had become genuinely difficult to manage. My body did not tolerate that change of identity at 17, Bojan later admitted. A boy from the village who in a period of a month and a half becomes a public figure. It made me very happy to debut, but at the same time, my body didn't accept it. He couldn't go out in public. He was taking anti-anxiety medication at an age when most footballers are just starting to figure out how to eat properly. Panic attacks became part of his routine. Not on rare occasions, regularly. The people who were close to him watched a teenager being slowly crushed under the weight of a reputation he never actually asked for. And yet, he kept playing. He put in 12 goals in his first full season, then 10, then 12 again. By any sane measure, this was a young striker thriving at one of the best clubs in the history of the sport. But sane didn't apply to Bojan's situation. He wasn't being measured against what was reasonable. He was being measured against Messi, who by this point was in the process of becoming arguably the greatest footballer who ever lived. Every goal Bojan scored came with a quiet question underneath it. But is he as good as Leo, though? He never was. Nobody was. And that gap between who he actually was and who the world had already decided he was supposed to be, it didn't close. It widened. And it slowly swallowed him whole. In 2011, Barcelona reached the Champions League final against Manchester United at Wembley. Bojan had been recovering from injury. His manager, Pep Guardiola, a man Bojan genuinely respected more than perhaps anyone in football, made him a promise. If Bojan got fit in time, he would play, even if only for a few minutes at the end. Get yourself ready, and I'll get you on the pitch. Bojan got fit. He made the squad. He sat on that bench at Wembley as Barcelona dismantled Manchester United 3-1. The Camp Nou faithful who'd made the trip singing the whole way through. He didn't play a single minute. In the dying moments, with the game already won, Guardiola brought on Ibrahim Afellay instead. "I only asked to play even if it were 3 minutes," Bojan said years later. And if you've ever heard him talk about it, you know he hasn't fully let it go. There's still something raw in how he describes that evening. Sitting on the bench in the dark of Wembley, watching the final whistle come, a winner's medal in his pocket that probably felt heavier than it should have. That summer, he left Barcelona. He was 20 years old. What came next is the part of Bojan's story that most people know, or think they know. Roma, AC Milan on loan, back to Barcelona, Ajax on loan, Stoke City, that surprised a few people, Mainz, Alaves, Montreal Impact in Canada, then Vissel Kobe, all the way to Japan. 9 clubs across 16 years. Flashes of real quality wherever he went. Enough to remind you what this player had once been, but never the consistency his talent seemed to promise. Never the Messi trajectory that Barcelona had mapped out in their heads for him. But here's what most people get wrong about that chapter of his life. Bojan wasn't failing because the talent dried up. The talent never went anywhere. You'd watch him at Stoke on a cold Tuesday in November, miserable pitch, half-empty ground, and there'd be a moment, a touch, a turn, a finish, and you'd think, right, that's still there. He was struggling because nobody, not the club signing him, not the coaches managing him, not the media writing about him, ever stopped to seriously ask what years of being called the next Messi had actually done to a teenager who just wanted to play football. The anxiety never went away. It moved with him. From Barcelona to Rome to London to Germany to Spain, and finally all the way to Japan, where he quietly retired at 32 with 400 career appearances and 93 goals. A career that would be genuinely celebrated if it belonged to almost anyone else on earth. Bojan Krkić retired in 2023. His farewell ceremony was held at Camp Nou, the club that made him famous and, in a lot of ways, unmade him quietly while the world was watching. He went back. He works there now in a coordination role at La Masia, the same academy, the same hallways he walked through as a 9-year-old, from a village where nothing like this was supposed to happen. Except now, his job is to prepare the next generation for exactly what nobody prepared him for. "At the end of my career, I wanted to tell my story," he said. "Not as Bojan the footballer, but Bojan the human. Because I know this is a story that can not only help football people, but also people in general. And that's the thing that stays with you after you sit with his story for a while. He wasn't destroyed by a lack of talent. He was destroyed by too much expectation placed on too young a person before he had any idea who he was. Before he'd even figured out how to be an adult, let alone how to be a symbol. Football did that to him. The machine that turns 15-year-olds into brands, that hands 17-year-olds the weight of an entire city's dream and then acts surprised when the kid buckles. It chewed Bojan up, shrugged, and moved on to whoever was coming through the youth system next. The question worth asking isn't whether Bojan Krkić lived up to his potential. The question is, who decided what his potential had to be? And did anyone, at any point, ask him if he was okay? If you'd never really thought about Bojan Krkić before today, I hope this gave you a reason to. There are hundreds of players out there like him. Brilliant young, buried under the weight of what football decided they should become before they were old enough to push back. This channel exists to find them, to actually tell their stories properly. Subscribe if that's something you want to keep hearing. And drop a comment. Who do you think is the most forgotten talent in football history? I genuinely love to know. See you in the next one.